Darkcast Network. The light shines brightest on our indie podcasts.
Welcome to Brew Crime, the podcast where we drink brews and talk crime, conspiracy, or whatever catches our attention. This is JT, and I'm here with my co-host,
Mike. That's me.
I almost read it that I was Mike, and you're JT, and you should be really scared. So
April
this
Fool's.
is... We're a little behind, but that's also, our moms agree about that with us, so it's fine. Who knows?
What?
We're here to talk about true crime. And also, it's a cool episode because we are, the theme is false confessions, but we're titling it the Reverie collab. Why, you ask? That's because we have a special guest today who's come just to hang out and drink non-beer.
Yeah, pretty much.
That sultry voice that you hear is Paige from Reverie Podcast.
Oh my god. Oh,
Hi.
y'all are terrible. Hi.
We are. It's true. I think hopefully people know that by now. But Paige, welcome to the insanity.
Thank y'all for having me.
Well,
No, we're happy to have you.
I'm glad you said it now and not later. It's harder to say thank you later after being with us for as long
Hours.
as you be. Yeah. Well, Paige comes from another true crime podcast. You want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, Reverie True Crime is basically a story narration podcast, and much like you do on others, the research, the writing, editing, all of that, do all of that plus host it, and it's just true crime stories and sometimes paranormal stuff, but mostly true crime.
And it's so good.
I don't know about all that.
Paige is bad about getting compliments.
I don't like it. I don't.
So if you listen to this episode, make sure you send Paige a good message about how you like listening to her voice.
Feel free to compliment by leaving us a review and 5 stars. And then in that review, all I want to see are compliments for Paige. That's it.
Yeah.
Nothing about our show.
Your third co-host is amazing.
Y'all are killing me. I can't do it. My face I can feel it burning up. I'm just blushing.
okay.
Stop.
Good thing it's an audio-only medium, right?
Yeah.
I didn't even think about it, but I'm glad you said it, because I forgot we were only audio. I don't know. Well, Mike, how have you been, sir?
Not too bad. Went to Hawaii. Now I'm back. The weather's kind of...
I like how you just
Not
kind of, like, swept that
too
under the
bad.
carpet, like...
Yeah, well, no big deal.
Not
left
bad.
the country the first time in 3 years. Nothing big.
I mean, how far is the flight?
It's 5 hours.
Okay. That's not bad at all. Holy crap. Well,
No. We're going to Toronto in a couple months, and it's a shorter flight to Hawaii.
what?
That is so crazy.
That's very telling. No Toronto. Yes, Hawaii.
Hawaii was very expensive.
That's also very true right now. Like, as far as I remember, a gallon of milk over there is like $3 or $4 more expensive than it is here. So, I don't know. Welcome to the U.S., Mike.
Didn't buy any milk there. I bought beer.
You did, and I just want to kind of say you put up a great video looking at a brewery, and that was for your other show.
Pacific Beer Chat, yes.
Yes. So check it out. All right, so today our topic is one that it just pisses me off. It just makes me so angry. We're covering false confessions today. And I don't know about your story, Mike, but mine is something else. It's a piece of work.
Yep.
But before I even kind of get into the case, I'll just hit you with the beer that I have chosen. which is a Samuel Adams, which I didn't know. As I mentioned earlier to you guys, I had no idea it was Sam Adams until I actually got it home and looked and said, I mean, there's a massive Sam Adams on here, but the whole design just made me ignore it. I don't know. Who knows? Anyways, it's called Sam Adams Wicked Double. It's a hazy, juicy double New England IPA. What I love about this is on the website, it tells you to turn it up to 11, and that reference makes me happy. Anyways, so it is very like fruity, which is fine. It kind of evens out the whole IPA hoppiness of everything, and it smells like beer.
Bro.
Everybody is welcome. No, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Usually when I go for these kind of things, I try not to get something that's like mass produced. But here we are.
Yeah,
Ta-da.
still independent.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I don't know things. I'm on Brew Crime. It doesn't mean I know anything about beer. So I don't have a clever title for this because the name that they have given these four folks is the Norfolk Four. Mike and I have been doing this for a long time. One could probably say that it's one of the hobbies that I've stuck with the most. Would I love it to be full-time? Absolutely. But that's not the point. The point is, in our time covering true crime and true crime adjacent, we've seen some pretty gnarly things. And I don't mean gnarly in the sense of a West Coast surfer riding gnarly waves. See the definition of my brother in the dictionary. What I do mean is the incredibly horrifying stories that come across our desks. I think we broadcast and dump. Sometimes once we tell a story or cover a case, that case is just kind of put away on the shelf and we don't worry about it ever again. And the reality is that both of us, and I don't want to speak for Paige. Paige, you can agree or disagree after this part. The reality is that the two of us and many other podcasters, not only on Darkcast, but those that we associate ourselves with, we carry the cases for a long time after, and we do realize that there are the victims and victims' families and friends that have to live with the repercussions of these cases and crimes for life. My point in all of this is to say that there's a lot that we've come across that is horrifying, and something I feel that has to be the most horrifying is a conviction based on a false confession. Not only are you embarrassed by being brought out and then back in while being paraded out in front of media, even in the smallest of cases, but you're alienated from family, friends, and then some. In addition, you're being portrayed as something you're not, even if you prove your innocence beyond a shadow of a doubt. You spend the rest of your life saying, yeah, but it wasn't me. No, really, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It's something else.
Nothing worse.
No, it's, shoot, I get embarrassed when somebody else gets in trouble standing next to me. Like,
Yeah,
if I get
same.
embarrassed for them, that would wreck me. Those who have been falsely accused and those who were fooled into doing so through tactics that I'll explain in a bit begin to question even themselves. The psychological tactics and pressure placed on someone without the proof of guilt is utterly disgusting. It's a ploy that's utilized inappropriately to secure a conviction. Why? Mostly get their arrest rates up and their time, a case is open, down. But is this the case all the time? No, probably not. I'd be stupid to think that, but I also know the pressure placed on law enforcement from within. That's not an excuse, but it is a reality.
I agree. I think that was very, very well said.
I definitely think that's a case. It's just they want to look good, and sometimes they make themselves really bad in the process.
Oh, this guy did. Get ready.
Uh-oh.
So the Norfolk Four sound like a gang. In fact, if I didn't know any better, and having lived close to Norfolk, Virginia for a while, where this all happened, this is a crazy obvious name for a gang in a movie starring the Rat Pack. The reality is much worse. 4 United States Navy veterans, Joseph J. Dick Jr., Derek Tice, Daniel Williams, and Eric C. Wilson were wrongfully convicted in 1999 and 2000. These convictions were for the rape and murder of Michelle Moore Bosco. Jeez. So you know me, I like to talk a little bit about the place. This was easy, because I lived there. So the city of Norfolk is, at worst, a weird place at night, and at best, a hard city to pronounce unless you're from there. Those that weren't born in the area will pronounce it Norfolk. Those who are from the area pronounce it Norfolk. And those who just wanted to get one over on the middle school teacher pronounce it Norfolk. Norfolk. That's
Norfolk.
It's sad, but all those ways that people pronounce it, that's real. It's so fun to listen to somebody you respect high up in a college atmosphere say Norfolk. It's something else.
I guess that's just the regional dialect thing. It's like the Appalachian Mountains and the Appalachian and all that kind of thing.
Well, when I visited a friend at Virginia Beach, it was my first time I didn't know it wasn't pronounced Norfolk. And then when I heard her say it, I was like, really? I didn't know that.
Is that how she pronounced it?
Yeah. She pronounced
Was she born there?
Yeah. She pronounced it Norfolk. Or what? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's it's Norfolk. Norfolk!
Yeah.
It's like an offensive version of Aflac. As you can tell, I've already moved into my second beer. Great. So, Norfolk's the third most populous city in Virginia, and it's the 94th largest city in the nation, which is crazy to me. It was incorporated in 1705, but it's been inhabited way before then, of course. It was incorporated as one of the 4 cities in 1619 by Sir George Yardley.
Wow.
Yes. It's surrounded by the Hampton Roads Natural Harbor, which connects everything to the Chesapeake Bay. Naval Station Norfolk is there, as well as one of NATO's 2 strategic command headquarters. And in addition, the Port of Virginia is there. And for the purposes of this case, the population in Norfolk was somewhere between 234,500 and 261,000. Notable folks to come out of Norfolk. Oh, get ready. Nobody's ready for this. Here's my first name. I'm hitting hard. I'm jumping the shark. Steve Bannon.
Norfolk.
Not true. Grant Gustin, who plays the Flash on CW. John Wesley Shipp, who plays the older Flash on CW. William McGee, the founder of Operation Smile. Wayne Newton. Scott Travis, the drummer for Judas Priest and Thin Lizzy. Patrick Wilson, actor and Tony winner. And the Norfolk Four. They're literally on that list online.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I was surprised. I mean, yeah, I was in Virginia twice. I was in there, in elementary school, early elementary school, and then high school through college. I don't remember hearing any of this. I guess I had actually talked to my dad, and we were there. We left like just a couple months before this happened. We'd moved to Maryland, but I know that if my dad was there, he'd be dealing with something. So before we talk specifically about the Norfolk Four, I want to get into a little bit about false confessions. We all know by now I can't just talk about the case. I like to give some context. You can't imagine how much is out there about false confessions. Or maybe you can. This is a big problem. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, as most of our listeners actually know a thing or two about crime and probably about confessions. False confessions are basically admissions of guilt for a crime that someone did not commit. And it sounds so basic, and it sounds so easy to avoid it, but it's not, or we wouldn't be talking about this today. It's all kind of counterintuitive. I mean, you didn't do something, but you still make that voluntary admission. Now, there's a difference between false confessions and forced confessions. Forced confessions happen when there is the use of torture or threat of physical harm. I didn't see much regarding the threat of the death penalty, but my thoughts are that if it causes mental distress, then it's a version of torture, but I don't know how many see it that way,
Yeah.
So there are at least 3 big causes of false confessions, and in an article called False Confessions, Causes, Consequences, and Implications by Dr. Richard Leo, which makes him sound like he's from The Matrix, he states that there's misclassification, coercion, and contamination. While there's no single cause, these 3 errors happen during the sequential events of interrogations. Misclassification occurs when detectives simply decide that the person they have in custody, whether innocent or guilty, is just straight up guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Davis and Leo say, quote, "The path to false confessions begins as it must. When police target an innocent suspect, once specific suspects are targeted, police interviews and interrogations are therefore or thereafter guided by the presumption of guilt." Coercion errors occur after detectives determine an innocent person is guilty and then follow up with the accusatory statements and interrogation. At this point, you can see the heavy weight a confession has in court, as the detectives might not have any evidence pointing to an innocent person, but the confession is so vital to get out of them because other than that, they have nothing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, if that's all you have is a confession and no evidence, confession should be worth nothing.
I lie all the time. I'm confused. Like, and I guarantee you those detectives have lied once or twice about when they're coming home, so...
Yeah. I don't remember what I did yesterday half the time.
Same.
Truly, I do not. I do
Yeah.
not have the brain cells to worry about memory. My favorite image on Facebook that people share around is I can remember every lyric of every 90s song I've ever heard, but I sure as hell can't remember why I went to the kitchen.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yep.
So, hit me, baby, one more time. Finally, the contamination error occurs after the initial false confession. After the confession is what is called the post-admission phase, where the story is told. They've kind of, quote, got it off their chest, and now they need to inform the detectives what happened. Quote, the detective's goal is to elicit a persuasive account that successfully incriminates the suspect and leads to his conviction. That's the point. You know, I always thought that they went in to just get information. Ha ha!
Yeah.
Yeah.
You innocent you.
Yes, Mike, I'm the most naive person you've ever met. Nobody believes that.
No.
Well, my next line is perfect for this situation and also in the script. What a mess for real. Like for real. In addition to the errors, there are also 3 types of false confessions. Voluntary false confessions are, quote, thus explained by the internal psychological states or needs of the confessor or by external pressure brought to bear on the confessor by someone other than the police. Most voluntary false confessions appear to result from an underlying psychological disturbance or psychiatric disorder. Compliant false confessions occur when someone confesses due to police coercion, stress, or pressure to either end the interrogation or take advantage of the deal, aka, we won't give you the death penalty if you confess. And then finally, persuaded false confessions, quote, occur when the police interrogation tactics caused an innocent suspect to doubt his memory, and he becomes temporarily persuaded that it's more likely than not that he committed the crime, despite having no memory of committing it at all.
That's
That
terrifying.
is that's a terrifying and awful, awful way.
And it also tells you how pliable and how manipulated, no matter who it is, can be within an interrogation room.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, the human mind is going to go that route because it's actually, to me, it's mental torture. And I find it completely and utterly useless for other than your name to be in the papers to close a case based on this. But alas, the Norfolk Four, it's quite the occurrence overall. And boy, is it ever an occurrence. In 1992, the Innocence Project was founded in order to use new DNA evidence to dispute certain questionable convictions. At present, which is the 2014 article called False Confessions, Causes, Consequences, and Implications for Reform by Saul Casson, 30% of over 300 DNA exonerations have involved false confessions. What?
Yeah. Jeez.
In the end, there are big issues with confessions in general, along with police interrogation tactics. One of the most widely used techniques until recently was the Reed technique. Has anybody heard of the Reed technique?
No.
No.
Cool. Then this part won't be as painful. This was popular up until 2014, and even past that. It includes a 9-step process, and it's all from the, basically everything that I have here is from the OLR Research Report on Interrogation Techniques, which says that this technique, quote, should only occur when the investigator is reasonably certain of a suspect's involvement in the issue under investigation. I guess my question is, what is reasonably? Are they actually going to listen to how to use it? And kind of, do you play with someone's life for the relative concept of what reasonably is?
Yeah.
Well, some of them do.
Accurate. So, what is involved in this? Step 1 is the positive confrontation. Tell the suspect the evidence shows that they are guilty. 2, theme development. Present moral justification for the offense and do it in a sympathetic manner. 3, handling denials. When suspects act for permission to speak at this stage, to deny accusations, discourage them from doing so. 4. Overcoming objections. When denial doesn't succeed, the guilty will make objections to support innocence. Accept objections like they are truthful and use objections to further develop the theme. 5 is procurement and retention of suspect's attention. Get suspect to focus on the investigator's theme rather than on the punishment. Close the physical distance between himself or herself and the suspect. As I'm reading this, are you like just seeing every single true crime documentary you ever?
Yes.
Yeah. And it kind of makes me think of like Mr. Big Stings in Canada too.
Yeah. And I was reading this report in like a coffee shop, and out loud, audibly, I said, "Fuck." It was fine. It was because if I went to explain why I, said that, I'm just going to worry people further. So it's whatever.
Well, true.
I'm sorry. I was studying about false confessions and death. And they'll say, "Oh, Norfolk," and I'll say, "Yeah." Step 6, handling the suspect's passive mood. Intensify the presentation and concentrate on central reasons as justification. Display understanding and sympathetic demeanor. Step 7 is presenting an alternative question. The investigator presents 2 choices while assuming guilt. And that's, for instance, did you plan this thing out or did it just happen in the spur of the moment? Follow the questions with supporting statements that encourage the suspect to choose choose the more understandable side.
Yeah.
Because, of course, they're going to say it was just the spur of the moment. Like, I didn't plan it. It's just understandable. Step 8 is having the suspect orally relate various details of the offense. After suspect accepts side of the alternative, basically admitting guilt, respond with a statement of reinforcement acknowledging the admission. Obtain brief oral review of the basic events before asking detailed questions. In step 9, converting an oral confession into a written confession. Repeating Miranda warnings, avoiding leading questions, using suspect's own language. But, my question is, what about in the 8 steps before that?
Yeah.
Like, you literally said avoid leading questions in the last step.
Yeah.
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 Contradictions never happen.
Right.
But, and the thing is this thing, they've used this forever. So it's not like they haven't had time to fucking fix it, And I guarantee you, all the good old boys who are still in the police department who are used to that, which is literally anything pre-2014, are still doing it. They probably have decades of doing it, right? I told you this gets me angry. So, leading interrogation tactic basically led to countless confessions. The problem is that this technique has been found to lead to more false confessions than anything because the subjects provided less information. It remains one of the most confrontational methods, and it took until 2017 for someone to say that it was no longer to be used because of its coercive methods. Humans is dumb.
Can you
Yes.
imagine, though, being in an interrogation room, they're yelling at you, you can't remember what you did 3 days ago or where you were, who you were with, everything becomes so just blurred in your mind, and they're making you think you really did this. That would be the most terrifying thing to me because my memory's bad anyway. And plus, I'm not going to remember, so I'm going to be like, shit, did I do it? Was I with someone who did it? What? That is horrifying.
Well, and we'll hear about this. What's even more horrifying, and we'll hear about this during the case discussion, is the people who could be convinced that they did something that actually happened 24 hours ago. Because you can't tell me they don't remember yesterday. I always joke that I have a bad memory, but I at least remember what I did.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. The Reed method is just kind of the most messed up one of the many techniques that there are for interrogation. I'm sure there's kind of others that have been used that are violent and insane, right? But, I didn't get into those. So in England, they use the peace method, and I just kind of want to talk about one other method to kind of let everybody know that all things police or law enforcement aren't entrapment, right?
Yeah.
Now, I presume that everybody uses this method in England. Obviously, there may be some old school fellas that don't. I don't know how that works, but so the PEACE method, basically, PEACE stands for preparation and planning, engage and explain, account, closure, and evaluate. And I'm not going to go into much more in terms of details at all, but I'll say overall, the method allows the suspect to tell his or her story without interruption before presenting the suspect with any contradictions between the story and the evidence. And the important part is that the investigators are not allowed to deceive suspects. They cannot do that. It's in the actual
really
language.
reasonable.
Right? It's too reasonable for...
Yeah.
I mean, literally the PEACE method is like what I use to explain to students how to present and prepare a speech. It's like everything I would use. I don't understand why this isn't used here.
Well, I would say that you'd think we'd use that same method here, but then they have Mr. Big Stings, which literally give you the chance to lie to the person and try to get them to admit to something regardless. So, and, lead them to crimes during the whole thing.
I joined the ranks of sorority girls who drink lattes in their Ugg boots to say that I can't even. Man, that was a really long line for a payoff.
I was wondering where you were going with it. I was like, where's it going? What?
That's my daily. You should be my wife. Poor woman. In an edited book by Mark Cabell and Graham Davies, they write, social scientists, legal scholars, and independent researchers have amply documented the contemporary methods of psychological interrogation, that it can and sometimes do lead innocent individuals to confess falsely to serious crimes. The consequences of these false confessions can be disastrous for innocent individuals who are wrongfully convicted and incarcerated. The consequences of false confession may be disastrous even for those who are not convicted at trial. 2 recent studies have documented that when false confessors refuse to plead guilty and go to trial, conviction rates range still from 73 to 81%. It's insane.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, let's talk about the Norfolk Four. Dum-ba-dum.
Let's.
So on July 8th, 1997, a crime was committed that could only be described as disgusting, cruel, and wretched. Trigger warning. A Navy sailor's wife was raped and murdered in their apartment home in Norfolk, Virginia. Billy Bosco, a 19-year-old Navy sailor, returned home from an assignment he had only to find Michelle Moore Bosco, his 18-year-old wife, stabbed and strangled to death. The autopsy later confirmed she'd been raped as well.
Ugh.
Yeah. The couple were high school sweethearts and had married just 3 months before her murder. Let me just tack that shit on top of the shit sandwich for you all.
Yeah.
God.
As mentioned above, the autopsy found she died due to being stabbed and strangled. The stab wounds were described as being uniform in depth and clustered closely together. The medical examiner said these kind of wounds happen with one assailant who stabbed someone multiple times. But there was an outside possibility of more than one person. But here's the thing. If the wounds are uniform in depth and around the same location, wouldn't you, as a human, think it was probably the same person?
Yeah, that would be my first guess.
And it'd be pretty tough for more than one person to get similar results. 2 people, maybe. 4, less than likely. Definitely room for reasonable doubt.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
In addition to this report, they didn't find any evidence of a struggle inside the apartment. Certainly not a large one. So, of course, there's not a lot to go on. Detectives are definitely looking for any possible leads. One of these detectives was Robert Glenn Ford, who at the time was around 43. We'll get more in depth with him later.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
As anyone would do in an apartment complex, you canvass the location and nearby residences to see if anyone saw or heard anything, or, if they knew the victim. Literally anything to give you some kind of lead. The police interviewed a neighbor of Michelle's, Tamika Taylor. During that interview, Taylor revealed that another neighbor, Daniel Williams, was kind of attached or, quote, obsessed with Michelle. Williams was, it's, there's layers, like ogres and onions. Williams was also a Navy sailor, and he lived in the apartment across the hall with his wife, Nicole. Da-da-da! He and Nicole were also recently married as well, and they shared the apartment with another sailor with the name of Joseph Dick, which is literally the only name that is more unfortunate than mine. So, anyways, they were both stationed on the USS Saipan, which was a large aircraft carrier. So, of course, they're going to want to bring in Daniel for questioning, right?
Yeah.
I think that's pretty consistent with what should happen. And where this story branches is that he was interrogated for 8 hours straight.
Jeez.
I refuse to even work 8 hours straight, let alone be interrogated. But that interrogation began at 5 a.m. Within the next hour, after that, he's like 8 hours going into 9 hours, but he confessed to Ford. He was treated like a criminal. He was threatened.
Yeah.
And eventually he broke down and confessed. During his interview, he had told Detective Ford that he was on duty on the USS Saipan at the time the murder occurred. Neither supervising officer said that they were ever interviewed by the Norfolk police or his defense counsel. In addition, no records were requested from the ship either. Ship logs show who's on duty at the time.
Yeah.
It's like, it's an easy, like, cross him off the
Yeah.
list.
Mm-hmm.
And I guarantee you those officers would have known if he was there or not.
Oh, God, yeah.
So
It's the military. There is
Yeah,
good records.
there's gonna be yeah, for sure.
They don't always want to release those records to the public, but there's really good records.
Mike aliens. We'll talk about that later. The assistant Commonwealth's attorney made the claim that he wasn't on the ship, even though it could have been proven, disproven, but the state didn't have to prove it, nor did they have to disprove his alibi because of the confession. Because that's literally the power of a confession. While waiting
How
for
stupid.
Yeah, I know. While waiting for his trial, he roomed with a jailhouse informant who stated there was another person who should be investigated, Eric Wilson, another sailor. Once they had Eric, they went back to Williams to see if there was anyone else. There are at two, they're at two. Let's go for more, right? Why not, Williams said that a dude named George was there, but he pointed to Derek Tice from his photograph. So he said his name was George, then he pointed to Derek Tice. All in all, 4 men were identified in air quotes.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, 3 of them were active duty and 1 was retired. Nobody, not one of these guys had a prior record at all. Nothing. Can somebody do that? Probably. I'm sure we have some kind of... I'm sure we've covered a case or two where there wasn't much, or if anything, and then all of a sudden... But to do it in a group seems
Yeah.
like you have some
Unlikely.
priors. So Derek Tice, who he pointed to, was arrested in Florida where he was living. Detective Ford traveled down there to arrest him, and then Tice was interrogated for 11 hours. There's not enough coffee.
Yeah. And then, of course, during that interrogation, they're going to have multiple police officers swapping out, probably going to have naps between their interrogations while this person is sitting there nonstop for hours
And losing
and
their
hours.
mind. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
No interrogation should be treated like a hospital shift. Where like you take 2 hours and then you come back. It shouldn't.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like doesn't work. So
Well, I mean, basically, I think anyone that's put in that situation, other than someone who is specifically trained not to, would admit to something. Because
Oh yeah,
It-
I
I think so.
would.
sleep deprivation, it's stress for that many hours.
Oh yeah, if I
It's
don't,
designed to break you down.
I can't stay awake for 11 hours straight. During a normal day, I need a nap. So if I'm in there and I'm exhausted, and I'm just like, okay, I'm about to go take a nap. I did it. Okay, like I can't.
Yeah.
I can't.
I could just see it the way that I drink caffeine these days. I'd be in the middle of talking and just wham.
Yes, exactly. Or just start shaking and then just pass out because you need the caffeine so bad.
Yeah, getting the shakes because I haven't had caffeine.
maybe that's why some suspects actually like sing in the interrogation rooms. I can't remember that woman's name, but she sang Amazing Grace in the interrogation room.
Oh, she was also a bit scary. But who was that?
She was. So Detective Ford traveled down there and, like I said, interrogated him for 11 hours. At the end, he confessed to the crime as well. And in addition, he named 2 further Navy men, John Pauley and Jeffrey A. Ferris. In return, they were arrested for rape and capital murder. The difference with these two sailors, they didn't confess. Jeffrey Harris asked, and that's not to put the other ones in, like, you know, saying that they're worse. I mean, maybe these guys were just able to, I mean, they were just like, I've seen enough Law and Order, which wasn't around that time, but, you know, well, maybe it was. Dick Wolf's been around a while.
Yeah.
I mean, I just finished saying that I don't think any of us would be able to go through one of those without admitting to something.
Are you kidding me? I'd get in there, they walk in, they look at me like in a stern way, and they'd say,
I would cry.
Yes, it was all me. Oh my god.
Oh, what movie is that again? Where they just the guy like, oh no, Spider-Man, where the friend just like just starts talking,
Just starts spilling his guts.
Yeah,
It's like, does anybody remember Goonies, where Chunk is being interrogated by the criminals, and he's like, and I took more than 3 pieces of toilet paper, and oh my god, that's a classic. Anyways, so Jeffrey Harris asked for a lawyer, which in turn stopped his interrogation. John Pauley was actually cleared, as he was confirmed being hundreds of miles away at the time of the murder. They had
No
work
excuse.
records. Yeah, right. Anything's possible if you believe. That's what Disney taught me. They had work records and bank records, and I'm surprised that they looked for them, because they sure didn't look for anybody else's
No.
records at all. But, you know, maybe they were just too obvious to miss.
yeah.
And I want so badly to get into the whole DNA right now, but the claims and additions of other suspects aren't over. And as I like to say, good grief, Charlie Brown. I do indeed like to say that. Oh, man. My poor children. Again, in October of 1998, over a year after the murder, they interrogated Tice, who then named John E. Dancer as a 7th individual. A 7th. Of course, John didn't confess either, primarily because he didn't do it, as he was living states away in Pennsylvania.
Oh wow.
But apparently that isn't enough. Despite having a few documents stating where he was still indicted for rape and capital murder.
Wow.
What the fuck?
Okay, now you're like making me paranoid that somebody could knock on my door tonight and be like, somebody in Alabama said that you were there like a few months ago, and like that's fucking scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paige, have you ever been in Norfolk?
Yeah, I mean, in 2019.
Not anymore. I can't believe you were in Norfolk in 2019
Yeah,
and
no.
didn't call a brother. Or me. Whatever. I didn't know you in 2019. It is what it is. I knew Mike. That's it. Poor Mike. So what about DNA, you say? Oh, it's the beginning of a Dr. Seuss book. DNA, you say? Of course, this was the late 90s, and while DNA wasn't uncommon, it certainly wasn't as expeditious as it still isn't now. Yeah, DNA is not very expeditious at all still. And it kind of depends on who you are and what the case is and what race you are. Anyways, Daniel Williams, oh my god, please support me audibly, y'all. You both shook your heads, and I was
We're
like,
both
oh my god.
nodding like,
Yeah, like people can see us. Yes.
yes. Great audio.
So it was early 1997. It wasn't until December 1997 that police learned that Williams' DNA wasn't a match. As if that wasn't bad enough, it wasn't until April of 1998 that they told his attorney. That's right. That's quite the we know something you don't. Nah, 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 nah.
Yeah,
That
that's
is
the longest game of that
absolutely-
ever.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Brady. I call him Brady. So, if you think that the timeline is effed, in January 98, 3 months before the defense attorney was told about the DNA, they offered Williams a plea agreement in which he would plead guilty for a life sentence and not death. And they already knew the DNA. Williams thankfully refused, and it was at that time that the police didn't know where to go. So they just decided to arrest Williams and roommate Joe Dick.
Jesus.
In March of 98, Dick's DNA was excluded as well. When Dick named Eric Wilson as a co-conspirator, his DNA was also excluded from the evidence at the scene. Tice's DNA was excluded as well. In February 99, almost 2 years after the murder, another DNA test was available, and that excluded all 7 men who were considered as suspects from the crime scene.
Jeez.
So the last 3 men named John Dancer, John Pauley, and Jeffrey Ferry had their charges dropped. But it didn't stop them from being in jail for a period of time.
No.
Despite all the DNA not matching, Detective Ford and the prosecutor, Damian Hansen, kept acting as if the other 4 were part of a, quote, multiple offender attack. And I can't even begin to express my fury. So, what else happened in 99 and 2000 when the trial started? Well, the real Slim Shady was on the radio, if that makes you feel good about yourself.
Will you please stand up?
No, because then you'll see my Snoopy pajamas. It's
fine.
No,
the real Slim Shady. You're not him.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not me. Oh,
the only lyrics I know of.
So, the story doesn't end here, so I submit that we Tarantino this shit and go back to summer of 97. Omar Abdul Ballard enters this story during that time, and this is around the time that he met both Bill and Michelle Bosco. June 27th, 1997, Omar, if he hadn't already proved himself to be a massive pile of cow turds when he beat a woman, Melissa Morse, with a bat at the same apartment complex that the Boscos lived at. His friend lived in an apartment there, and her name was Tamika Taylor. If you remember that name, that was who the police interviewed who lived next to the Boscos. So the woman who lived next to them, who pointed out Daniel Williams as the, quote, weirdo, and which led to him being arrested, interrogated, and creating an avalanche of poor form on the Norfolk Police Department's part. So while the heat was on, Tamika took Omar over to the couple's apartment. You'd think this would spike some concern, and by that what I mean is after he beat that woman Melissa in that apartment complex, not the actual case.
Yeah.
She took him in until people stopped looking for him.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, she actually actively turned men away. So, we're going to get back to his involvement with the Boscos, but 10 days after the rape and murder of Michelle, he beat and raped a 14-year-old girl a mile away from the apartments. For that crime, he was apprehended. And this was January 98, and he pleaded guilty. Grammar.
Yeah.
A little later, he was charged with the other brutal attack, and he was put away for 41 years. Of course, for whatever reason, Omar found it important to brag to someone from prison. In February of 99, he decided he would threaten someone by writing a letter, and how did he choose to make her scared? He claimed to have murdered Michelle Moore Bosco.
Jeez.
Oh my God.
Oh, what a turn of events. Note, this is February 99, and around this time was when the 7 men, all 7 men, were excluded due to the DNA tests. At what point they actually had this letter versus the DNA, I don't know. What I do know is this. Tamika Taylor, the person who Omar sheltered with for a bit, said that she told Norfolk police pretty quickly after the murder in questioning that they should investigate Omar as a person of interest. That would have been in 97. It wasn't until February 99 that they decided to look into it.
My God. They get a warning about this guy. They could have just looked at his record.
Yeah.
Police had received a copy of the letter in February of 99. That's pretty much when they decided to start looking into it. When questioned, he confessed twice to the police in March and April of 99. Not only that, but papers were sent to the court including the confession. Not only that, but I happened to find his affidavit with the confession. So, there's a couple of lines in that confession that I kind of want to read out.
Yeah, please do. I like this, when we find things like this, it's always interesting to me.
So, line 2, I acted alone when I killed Michelle Moore Bosco. None of the other individuals who were charged with raping or killing Michelle were there or involved in any way. They are all innocent, and the ones who are in prison are serving long sentences for crimes they did not commit. That's line 2. Mm-hmm. Line 8. After I had sex with her and killed her, I left Michelle's house in the early morning hours of July 8th, 1997, and went to Tamika's house where I slept on the couch. The police questioned Tamika that day, but they did not ask me any questions.
Wow.
Line 9. I know. In fact, the police did not question me about Michelle's murder until 1999. Line 10. Ford said, just give us 5 minutes. He then showed me pictures of the other defendants and asked if I knew them. I told him I did not know the other defendants. Oh, line 11. On or about March 4th, 1999, Detective Ford and another detective returned with a warrant. Ford asked me a series of leading questions in an attempt to get the version of the crime he wanted. For example, Ford would tell me some detail about the killing of Michelle and then ask me a question, encouraging me to use the detail he had just provided in my answer. I repeatedly told Ford that I committed the crime alone, but Ford wanted me to say that the other defendants had been involved. Oh, spill the tea, Omar.
Right?
You're still
He's a piece
you're
of
still a
shit,
dick,
but yeah.
Yeah.
he gets to call out another piece of shit. It's
Yeah.
fine. So, line 12, March 11th, 1999, Ford and another detective visited me again. I gave them a second written statement. In that statement, I remained truthful in saying that I committed the crime alone. Line 13, in addition to the 2 written statements on March 4th and 11th, 1999, I repeatedly told Detective Ford and his partners that I killed Michelle alone. Line 14, although I continued to tell the detectives and prosecutors that I committed the crime alone, nobody would believe me. As part of the plea agreement, I signed a very short statement describing the crime based on what Detective Ford implied had happened. That statement is totally false.
Very few killers would be this insistent that it was them alone. They'd be like, yeah, they did it too, whatever. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Line 15, at the second trial of Derek Tice, I was going to testify truthfully and tell the jury that I committed the crime alone. Unfortunately, nobody wanted to hear the truth. Oh, get ready.
Oh,
Line 16, about a month before I was transferred to the holding cell in Alexandria to testify at Tice's second trial, Ford and another detective visited me at prison. At the time, I was planning to testify truthfully that I committed the crime alone. Ford made clear through his statements and actions that he wanted me to testify that I had nothing to say. He knew that if I testified, I would tell the truth that I committed the crime alone. Ford did not want me to tell the truth that Tice was not involved in Michelle's murder. Oh, God.
What the fuck?
Here's what's even worse. He also said that his own lawyer came in to tell him that he had nothing to say, as did one of the prosecutors. They visited him in prison and told them he had nothing to say. That's exactly what he ended up saying.
Wow.
I'm just angry.
Yeah.
I think really what you want to say is, why isn't this a Netflix special yet, right?
Yeah.
He basically stated he has no knowledge of the other folks who were condemned to prison. In early March of '99, he was interviewed by Ford and Peterson. A week later, he was interviewed again and gave the full details. Despite this, the convictions and false confessions were allowed to stand as primary evidence.
So what is the reason that they didn't want the real criminal in prison instead of these, because it would make them look bad that they messed up, basically?
Yeah. Plus, Omar's already in prison for 41 years, and the other guys are in prison and have been for years, and you've left them in there, so cover it up, I guess. I don't know. A year later, notes surfaced from Detective Ford from an interview with Omar Ballard on March 15th, 2000. I'm not exactly sure about all of this, but here is the smidgen of lies that Ford wrote about the actual interview with Omar. During this interview, Ballard stated that he met Daniel Williams, Joe Dick, Eric Wilson, and Derek Tyson in the parking lot. Ballard stated that he had been told not to come on the property, but he had family there, so he had to come see them. Ballard further stated that he knew Daniel Williams from the Bosco's apartment. The 4 white males told him that they had tried to get Michelle to open the door and let them in, but she refused. Ballard stated that he walked up and knocked on Bosco's door, and the 4 males stood to the side. When she opened the door, they all rushed in. I'm going to leave the rest out of this, but I haven't heard any of this. I'm pretty sure Omar never said any of this.
Yeah.
But what's absolutely clear is that Omar did it. He confessed repeatedly. The story remained the same years after. Despite that, 4 guys were put in prison for a very long time based solely on their false confessions after being destroyed in interrogation, mentally and otherwise. So what's the aftermath of all this? Williams and Dick pleaded guilty to rape and capital murder and agreed to the following. They were not tried by a jury. They were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and Dick said he would testify as the state's witness against the two other guys. Wilson was acquitted of murder, but he was found guilty of rape. He recanted this confession, and he said it was due to intense interrogation tactics. Wilson and Tice, despite their attorneys saying that the DNA excluded them, the prosecutor said that the, quote, lack of DNA evidence did not mean that these defendants were not at the scene. Despite defense saying Ballard confessed to being the only one, the prosecution said it was a group attack. Wilson was sentenced to 8.5 years. Tice was found guilty of rape and capital murder and sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences. Dick testified against him, but the only evidence prosecution had was Wilson's signed confession, which he recanted. Ballard pleaded guilty in March of 2000 and said he incriminated the Norfolk Four in order to receive a sentence of 2 life terms rather than the death penalty he was threatened with. The prosecutor, who is just as much of an asshole as the detective, moved to the city of Chesapeake, Commonwealth Attorney's Office, and he continued to prosecute the Norfolk Four throughout their time in the justice system. He just didn't give it up. And I think he kept the case because he didn't want the opposite to happen, right?
Yeah.
But he eventually became deputy attorney because, of course he did. All we really need to know is that every avenue the Four took failed. In 2004, the Innocence Project actually took up their cause. Tice's second conviction was overturned in 2006, and this was a Virginia Circuit Court that did it. Then, the state appealed to the Virginia Supreme Court, which then reinstated the conviction. There was a petition for habeas corpus filed, and the Circuit Court's decision to vacate charges and convictions ended up being upheld, and he was freed in 2011, 14 years later.
Jesus.
That's a long time in a cell.
Yep. Around May 2010, the infamous Detective Robert Ford was indicted in Virginia on unrelated federal extortion charges.
Ugh.
He accepted money from criminal suspects in return for favorable treatment.
Wow.
Ooh.
So, of course, defense attorneys all said, hey!
Yeah.
like, wait a minute. And they basically called for their clients' charges to be vacated.
Yeah.
The convictions of Williams and Dick were vacated, and they were exonerated in October 2016, 19 years later. U.S. District Judge John Gibney said, quote, by any measure, the evidence showed that Daniel Williams and Joseph J. Dick did not commit the rape and murder to which they each pleaded guilty, and, quote, no sane human being could convict them by the available evidence.
Someone born the same year of that murder could drink in Canada by the time they got out of jail. That is fucking bonkers.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Bonkers.
Ultimately, it wasn't until March 21st, 2017, in which the Virginia governor gave all 4 absolute pardons. Eventually, the Norfolk Four filed a suit against the city. The city of Norfolk paid them $4.9 million, and the state added another $3.5 million to that.
It's not
20
enough.
years.
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
no.
Not enough.
I did the math.
no amount of money gives you those years back.
No.
So it's
But still,
yeah.
it's not enough, regardless.
Yeah.
So I said I did the math. I really did do the math. So 20 years in jail for something that you didn't do. $8.4 million total. That's $2.1 million per person. That's $105,000 per year that they were falsely convicted. And that's not enough.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's
At
not. No.
Wow.
That's, less than 8 houses here. It's
an eighth
not
of
a
a
lot
house.
of money.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, it's a big
what-
house then.
I don't math, man. You know this. What kills me is that it wasn't until November 2016 that the Virginia Attorney General instructed the Norfolk Police to videotape all interrogation and confessions in cases involving homicides. It took them until the end of 2016 to say that they needed to film all interrogations.
Yeah. Well, I don't think the FBI records any of their interrogations still. So, hey.
Well, that makes me angrier, Mike.
Yeah, same. Same.
As far as I know from all of the stuff I've listened to about the FBI, I don't think they record any of their interrogations to this day. They take notes.
Oh,
Which is
and those can be
fucking
trusted,
nuts.
I'm sure. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
Nope. Well, with Detective Ford at the wheel for so long, I'd be fascinated to know just how many people were coerced into false confessions with him.
Yeah.
Be interesting.
Yeah, it would
So,
be.
Final thoughts. I know everybody's waiting for this moment. Anyways, confessions are given too much clout. I'm not saying
Yes.
that they should not be considered. I mean, confessions are great when they're given at someone's own free will and without coercion. They are great when they are given without conflict or issue. However, I think two things need to happen. One, we need to reconsider how we play this interrogation game. Maybe we need to consider the peace method I mentioned at the beginning. And two, until that point, we need to give far less credence to confessions and more weight on, I don't know, evidence?
Yeah.
They should help. They can't be the only evidence. They can't.
Right. And I realize that's not a perfect solution. And you can come up with a million reasons why maybe my two things wouldn't work. But here we are, and there they were, and that's the story of the Norfolk Four and false confessions. And that went way longer than I had ever intended it to.
Yeah.
That's a good it's a good
Sorry.
discussion though.
Yeah.
Man.
I'm also surprised it's not the Norfolk 7 then, because there were 7 people that
Right.
got all tied up in it.
And the only reason that they didn't get tied up in it is because they refused to confess and ask for lawyers. So
Smart.
yeah, smart.
Smart and lucky.
Yeah.
All right. I don't have a great title for mine like I sometimes do. So this is the Murder of Susan Hamwi, the beer that I've decided to pair with this case. There's a dual pairing for it, and I'm only going to tell you half of it now and half later because it gives away too much of the whole case.
Rude. Oh, well, in that case, that makes sense.
Yeah. This is the Numbskull Double IPA from Lighthouse Brewing in Victoria. It's a 9.1% alcohol beer. I love the fact that the logo on the can is like a skull, but it also, if you look closely, it's like a hop cone, and it's kind of like an iceberg because it's kind of underwater.
Yeah,
Like,
that's.
there's a lot
I
of
love
different like things going on. It's kind of neat.
It reminds me of the whole concept of you only see the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a sort of a copper color, white head. It's clear as can be. It's definitely more of a West Coast style IPA. Kind of fruity, a little bit of grain on the nose, a little bit sweet. There's definitely some fruitiness up front, but then it kind of goes back into some bitterness and resin and some sort of pithiness. It's quite tasty though. It doesn't taste like 9.1% alcohol.
I think I could watch Mike do this and like listen to him talk about it all day. Like
I've said this so many times on this show.
I really
There is
could.
nothing like it.
There-
There's
it's just-
literally nothing like it.
it's so fascinating, just swirling it around like it's wine and smelling it. I love it.
All right, so let's get into my case, and then I can tell you the other half of the pairing. Susan K. Bolender was born on October 5th, 1945. I am sad that I was unable to find very much information about her until just before she met her future husband, other than she does have a sister named Karen. Like, couldn't find out her parents' names, like what she liked to do in school, like none of that information, which is really awful.
Yeah.
But
It's one of those things where it's like it feels awful because we can't give her much of the history that
Yeah.
maybe she deserves, but also at the same time, maybe her family's very relieved that you can't find it. So,
yeah, but
Yeah.
it'd be nice to be able to just, let people know about her more.
No, it's true. It's a triple-edged sword.
That I feel the same. Yeah.
I do know that she went to beautician school and worked as a beautician before becoming a real estate agent in Fort Lauderdale. So it's basically what I know about her history. Her friend Karen Grasser would also state that she was strikingly beautiful and delightfully unpretentious.
You know what? I would love it if somebody would say that about me. It's a great compliment.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
is.
She must have been fantastic.
Yeah, it sounds like she was, but fortunately we don't really know a lot about her.
I know.
So our friend Karen Grasser was living in Aspen, Colorado, and was dating a guy who would later become her husband, Karen's husband. He happened to know a guy named Paul Hamwi, who owned a construction company that specialized in condos in Aspen and was doing very well for himself.
Sorry, every time somebody says Aspen, all I think of is Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah, same.
Where they're like, Aspen.
Never seen that movie. Susan would come on a holiday and spent her time with Karen, and it was because of this she would end up meeting Paul. While her and Paul would hit it off, Karen would warn her off. It sounds like there were some rumblings about what he was really like. But the two would hit it off and would end up conceiving a child out of wedlock. Now, according to Karen, Susan was a Catholic, and she was very upset that this happened, and they were not married. You know, you hear that from Catholics all the time, right?
I feel attacked. I feel attacked, but seen, but attacked. Okay.
Yeah. So the decision was made that she would move to Aspen and they would get married. Unfortunately, as can happen with accidental pregnancies, with the two people that do not know each other, things wouldn't go well, and not long after the wedding, they would already be filing for divorce. It sounds like there were likely some domestic violence issues on the part of Paul, and Susan would pack up their baby girl, Shane K. Hamwee, who was still very, very young. Aspen was an expensive town, and Susan had a property still in Fort Lauderdale, so she would move back there with Shane in July of 1983. When getting married, Paul would insist that Susan sign a prenuptial agreement that stated that she would end up with nothing in case of a divorce.
Oh,
Wow.
ouch.
I don't know about the rules in the States. I know like in Canada, you can do a prenup for stuff from before the marriage.
Yeah.
But not really after the marriage, but I don't really know if that was the case. And this is the 80s, so who the fuck knows?
True. Yeah.
Listen, Rick Astley knows.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But he will never, what is that?
He'll never give
Never
it up,
gonna
though.
give you
Yeah.
up. Never gonna let you down.
Exactly.
People will never see the neck work that I just put in. I'm tired. My Apple Watch just said I met my goal.
Wow. Now, a judge in their divorce proceedings would look at the prenup and throw it out, stating that it was signed in duress. That same judge would order Paul pay Susan between $150,000 to $180,000, according to one of the sources. So, it's up in the air, but it's a lot of money.
Y'alls.
There would be mention that Paul was a Vietnam vet and was also known for drinking to excess and physically abusing Susan.
Two things you don't want on your CV.
No.
Yeah.
Now, back in Fort Lauderdale, Susan and Shane would get to building a life in Florida. She would be friendly with her neighbor John Gordon Purvis, a man that was known as weird and was known to unsettle Susan some, but not enough to avoid him.
I mean, we've all known that person in high school. And if you didn't, you were that person in high school.
Yeah.
It's me. Who was just a little unsettling.
No, there are certain people where you get this feeling like something just isn't right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
It's
usually
true.
nothing.
Yeah.
November 1st, 1983 was the last time Susan would be heard from, as she had a talk on the phone with a friend. It would not take long for the neighbors to start to worry about where Susan was, as they had not seen or heard from her or Shane for a few days.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you know what's crazy, though, is that, like, I feel like now my neighbors would be like, fucking on vacation. I guess they didn't come back.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. People like never hear from me, so if I didn't talk to anybody for 3 days, nobody would even know because like
Paige, we would know because you weren't on Twitter for a day.
so true though. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would know. I would know. But that's because I'm an hour ahead of you, so I just know things.
On November 8th, 1983, her body would be found in her home in the kitchen. Susan had only been 38 years old at the time of her death. She had been sexually abused, but I am unsure at what stage of the crime, as well as being stabbed through the heart and strangled with a phone cord.
Wow.
I mean, you can't say that's not personal.
No, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's
Jesus.
definitely.
Part of the knife had broken off and was still in her head, while the handle was found in the kitchen with no fingerprints.
That's rough, man.
Buckle up, because, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It gets worse here.
Buckled.
Unfortunately, Shane was found dead of dehydration, as at 18 months old, she could not fend for herself.
Oh, no.
The only piece of evidence they would find was a single red hair. That's it.
Oh, my God.
Of course, as always, the husband was a suspect from the get-go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Paul would have a rock-solid alibi, though, as he was in Aspen at the time of the murder. So it could not be him, right? During canvassing the neighborhood, they would speak to John Gordon Purvis, 42, the odd neighbor, as well as his mother, Emma Jo Bartlett, 66. John just happened to have red hair.
I don't know what to think.
Now let's talk about John. John's father died on February 20th, 1942, shortly after he was born, the same year. I don't know John's actual birth date, but it was just before his father died, so kind of got an idea of when. His father had been a World War II vet with the U.S. Marines. His death was obviously a huge blow to Emma, John's mother. John had issues from a very young age, with reports that at the young age of 6, he would cry often and be too scared to go to school and would just latch onto his mother. If a fight broke out at school, he would break down into tears instantly. He would have trouble with school and with building relationships with people, and that likely kept him very close to his mother. He would finally be diagnosed with chronic, undifferentiated schizophrenia.
Good God.
So that explains why he's the odd neighbor.
Yeah.
So this is defined as a classification used when a person exhibits behaviors which fit into 2 or more of the types of schizophrenia, including symptoms such as delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech or behavior, and catatonic behavior. So this is a person that's dealing with some serious, serious shit, right?
Yeah. And so I think I know where this is going, and it's going to be sad, huh?
Yeah. This would absolutely lead people to think of him as a weird neighbor if they didn't know him well enough, or if they didn't care to understand, which a lot of people don't fucking care.
True.
They really don't. His struggles with mental health would keep him from working, but his medication would help him some. And this is the 80s again, so the medications were not as good as they are now, and they're still not the greatest.
Yeah.
He would also spend some time inside of an institution for schizophrenia. His favorite pastime seemed to be watching TV or going out for dinner with his mother. Again, it's just connections with people, just not there. It's just his mother, and that's about it.
I wonder if he was also kind of on the autism spectrum.
Could be. Yeah, if you did these tests now, it could have been that too. But definitely schizophrenia was there for him.
Did he ever, lash out in anger? Was that, a trait that he had or not?
I didn't see anything about that. No, it mostly seemed to be breaking down and crying and
Yeah.
freaking out and running to his mother. And
Yeah, so no anger.
yeah, there didn't seem to be any anger issues that I read about. So John was just the victim that the Fort Lauderdale police needed to close their high-profile murder case.
Yeah.
Police would talk Emma into allowing John to go to the station as long as she would be able to join him. So officers Rick Rice and Rick Martin would take John into an interrogation room and scream and berate him.
Oh, God.
They would be so loud that Emma would hear them and demand that the interview was ended.
This is like the whole making a murderer thing again.
Yeah.
Well, my little cousin who I was talking about the other day, he has autism. And anytime anybody yells, even if we're joking, he'll say, "Stop arguing." Like, we're just joking. So to imagine him older and still being like that little child, oh, this is just killing me. Ugh.
Yeah. So John was traumatized by the treatment, as could be expected. I mean, anyone would be. But if you're dealing with a lot of mental health issues, and serious ones, schizophrenia is not a laughing matter.
Right.
It's an awful condition to have. This would be awful.
I mean, we just talked about 4 Navy sailors, grown men, who
Couldn't handle,
couldn't handle it. And
Yeah.
you're talking, okay.
I mean, my next line that I wrote was, shit, I would be shaken and I don't suffer from schizophrenia. Like, fucked.
Yeah.
Now, absolutely none of the evidence pointed to John. Not even the hair that they had found at the scene. Just because it was the same color, it was not his hair. John even had a solid alibi. This mattered not to these two crappy cops, though, as they knew that they had their man. They would wait a month until they could catch John without his mother.
Oh, hell no. No.
Yeah. When they did, they would arrest him and bring him back for questioning. Back at the station, the police would bring in psychiatrist Dr. Joel Klass, who would administer a personality test.
Sounds like he got a psychiatry degree online.
Yeah.
I'm Joe Klass.
He would do the test using TAT cards, or thematic apperception test cards. During the test, one card would get a weird reaction from John. Now remember, only a month before Rich and Rick, the officers that interrogated John, had terrified him, right? So there's going to be a trigger.
Yeah.
This is a quote from Unsolved Mysteries fandom. So John said, "Will I have to go to jail or can I go to a hospital?" Dr. Klass said that he felt intimidated by John's strong reaction to this card. John then said, "Do you think I did it?" Several times Dr. Klass said that he did not know because he did not want to make any leading comments. John then said, "I killed her. I liked her," and implied that she did not respond to him in a favorable way. The psychiatrist would relay this information to the officers, and this is when things got really bad for John.
This is so sad. I cannot take it.
Yeah. Yeah, this definitely has multiple victims in it.
Ugh.
And it's like at the same time, she's not getting justice by
No.
making him confess, knowing he's unwell.
Yeah. And I mean, it wasn't even like a hard forced confession.
Oh, it wouldn't have. No.
No, but I mean, he confessed to it, and he didn't do it. You know, spoiler alert.
Yeah. I know that myself. I mean, I respect authority, or authorite, or authorita, depending on if you're a South Park friend. But I would imagine that somebody who might think a little bit differently, or be different, would say, this is a police officer. My understanding is that they're good, therefore they're good. Therefore, whatever they're saying must be true.
Yep.
In no way, shape, or form should that have ever been allowed.
Yeah. So the officers would begin their interrogation. This would be a taped interrogation to boot, and it was an absolute abomination of an interrogation. Leading questions, intimidation, and the likes were the game for the officers, and in the end, they would get an admission of guilt out of John only because they told him he could go home if he cooperated.
Oh.
One of the big issues is that his confession had all kinds of inaccuracies with the facts of the murder. No evidence, wrong facts.
But it's a confession.
Sounds a lot like in the West Memphis 3, the kid that was, he was developmentally disabled, and they totally took advantage of that.
Yeah. This would be the investigation's smoking gun, and they would charge John, and it would go to the courts. The judge would throw out the confession tapes, though, as John had never been read his Miranda rights.
Oh my God.
Wow.
But the statement by John that "I killed her, I liked her," was to the psychiatrist, ended up being all the proof the jury and the judge needed, and he would be sentenced to life in prison. Again, fucking nothing.
Can you imagine his mother? I just can't imagine his mom, and now, the real killer hasn't been caught either, so it's just fucked.
Yeah. After Dr. Joel Klass heard the confession tapes, he was appalled and never worked with the police again for the rest of his career. So at least there's that.
Wow.
He just told, this is what I heard from him, He was just doing his job, and it got way out of hand. So this is a quote from TampaBay.com by Dr. Klass. Had the jury heard the tape, Klass says now, they would have heard Purvis rambling and inconsistencies. Purvis mistakenly described how Susan Hamwee was killed and what she was wearing. He claimed to have strangled and smothered the baby who was not touched. He claimed to have taken a ring when the ring wasn't missing. It's unfortunate Purvis's attorney was able to keep the long, contradictory confession from the jury because if they had, the doubts would have been far stronger, Klass said. Which is true, actually. If they had heard the actual confession tape, they probably would have been like,
Oh, God. And they
something's
know
wrong
that.
here. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the defense attorney was trying to do the right thing, but in the end, it wasn't.
Yeah.
John would spend almost 9 years in prison without proper treatment for his schizophrenia.
Oh my God.
This would be torture for anyone, but even worse with untreated serious mental health issues.
Some people can't survive off their medicine.
No. A tip would come into the police about a man that claimed his father had murdered a woman in Florida in May 1985. The man who inadvertently gave the information was named Robert Wayne Becker Jr., and he told what seemed to be his girlfriend after beating her up. He sounds like a piece of shit, and he was trying to scare his girlfriend.
I'd call that a certified piece of shit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So the man in question was Robert Wayne Beckett Sr. Now, of course, the police would take the tip, right, and do nothing with it. It would literally be buried for a long time. Finally, 2 new homicide detectives would be put in place in Fort Lauderdale, named Tim Bronson and Bob Williams.
Bronson and Williams.
Now, these 2 men would go through old case files, and they would find the tip about Robert Wayne Beckett Jr., boasting and notice just how weak the case was against John. They would go to their superior and get the go-ahead to reopen the case in the summer of 1992. They would finally find Robert Beckett Sr. in Nevada, and after a lot of work, they would get him to finally spill the beans. The only downside is that he would only tell all with immunity, and they decided to give it to him as he was suffering from heart disease and was not expected to live all that long.
What?
His confession would end up being 4 hours long, and it was a taped confession. So, this is where I'll tell you the other connection to this beer.
Because I'm so angry right now. I need this. Like, tell me what it is.
Now I just need a drink.
Yeah.
The artwork that was designed for this label was by a company on Vancouver Island called Hired Guns Creative. Hired Guns.
Guns Creative.
That's my little hint for the rest of this story.
That's the... Oh. Ah.
Yes.
Almost went over my head, but I caught it. A little too
Paige,
late.
you just
Yeah.
get to the front of your hair and put it down here, and then just cut so you get the bangs, and you catch all that stuff.
Yeah. You see, Paul Hamway was ordered to pay $150,000 plus in a divorce, and he was having none of it. So he offered lowlife Robert Beckett Sr. $14,000 to murder her. Robert would get his friend Paul Ciro in on the murder plot. The day of the murder, Susan let Robert into her house as he worked with Paul, her ex-husband's construction company, right? She knew him. I guess she didn't think anything of him.
Wouldn't consider him a threat.
After murdering Susan, they put a water bottle with Shane in her crib, as they understood that there was a mechanism put in place to ensure that her body would be found soon and the baby would be okay. Investigators would also have Robert Beckett Sr. call both Paul Hamway and Paul Ciro and record discussions about the murder. In the span of 1 week in January 1993, wrongs would finally be righted. Both Pauls would be arrested and be charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. But also, John Gordon Purvis would be released from jail. Finally.
Jesus.
It's heartbreaking that it went that way.
Yeah, it is heartbreaking, right? On February 24th, he would be officially exonerated in a formal hearing. Paul Ciro would be told that Shane had died, and he broke down and told police that he wished he could kill himself. Because again, he had no intention of killing the child. I mean, still a shit person for trying to kill the wife, but I guess he drew the line at children. When Paul Hamway found out, he didn't seem to care. His own child.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
March 1994 would see both Pauls sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Susan Hamway, but they would be acquitted on the murder charge of Shane. Because it wasn't intended, I guess. I don't know. Paul Ciro would die in prison on February 20th, 2004. Robert Beckett Sr. would also die in prison in 1997 as he would be picked up for a different murder and sentenced to life in prison.
So really,
Yeah.
like, you made the argument of a lifetime to get immunity, and then all of a sudden, well done, sir.
Wow.
You're a real winner.
Wow.
Yeah.
He probably thought, well, I got away with it once, like, I can do it again.
It appears that Paul Hamwee is still rotting in prison to this day. Unfortunately for John Purvis, life has been very rough, and he has suffered with psychological issues. He has been able to get treatment, and it seems to have helped some. Sadly, the state of Florida has no laws in place to compensate wrongfully convicted people, and as such, John would have to sue the city of Fort Lauderdale.
It's because fucking Florida would go bankrupt
Yeah,
for all the people
seriously.
that are in jail.
Yeah. And this will make you even more mad. 9 years in prison. The city would settle and hand over $1 million to John.
For
them.
9 years? No.
Even in the 80s, that's not enough.
Hell no.
Fuck them.
Yeah. Sadly, Emma, John's mother, would pass away at 89 years old in August 5th, 2006. In the end, an innocent man was able to regain his freedom, and the family of Susan K. Bolender Hamwee would have some justice with the actual murderers in prison. But yeah, that's my case.
Both of your stories are just so crazy and make me so angry.
Yeah.
Definitely taking a THC gummy after this.
Yeah, buddy.
No doubt.
I think I'm
Yeah.
I'm so frustrated about the cases, but I'm even more frustrated that these aren't even like a molecule on the tip of an iceberg.
Right. There's so
You know?
many out there.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
it's a shit sandwich.
Well, we're so happy in this most positive time of the United States to bring you these positive stories.
Seriously.
I will say that we have a brand new design in our store. And it looks awesome, and Mike's wearing it now.
Hell yeah,
If you
I've
like
got
anything,
to get one.
if you like anything Jay and Silent Bob, or just in general supporting kind of local artists, getting their stuff out there, but also supporting us.
Well, I wouldn't say local artists, but independent artists. He's an
Independent.
artist out of Texas and did a fucking epic
I
job
mean, when
on
I
it.
tell y'all, it is probably one of it's got to be up there with one of my favorite little logos that I've ever seen, because I love Jay and Silent Bob so much, and the perfection that is that logo. I've got to get that shirt. I've got to.
It is really awesome.
It is.
Yeah. As soon as I
it's
saw
fun.
the logo, I'm like, I'm buying myself one of these shirts.
Hell yeah.
My favorite thing about that design is that it came out of just a random ass conversation with the network.
Oh, did it?
Darkcast Network. Yeah, I think
Yeah, it
Mike
did.
did it. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it
I
did,
didn't
yep.
know that.
Yas. Anyway, so you can check us out on TeePublic. If you search Brew Crime, you'll find us.
Go to brewcrime.com and you can go to the store button and go buy the shirt, the stickers, whatever you want. There's you throw pillows, all kinds of shit.
It's awesome. And, literally search for us on anything, any social media, Brew Crime. We don't make it hard to find us.
No.
On Twitter, I'm JT Brews Crime. But other than that, that's about it. Paige, where can you be found?
Well, on Twitter, it's the only one that's different from everywhere else. For some reason, Reverie True Crime was taken on Twitter or not available. So it's Reverie Crime Pod, but everywhere else is Reverie True Crime. So
And just quickly, a little summary of what your show's about again.
it is true crime stories narrated and written and researched by me. And sometimes JT hops on and helps me write a little bit because JT is just awesome at writing. And I'm like, hey, look at this. I need your help. Help me structure this. Help me spruce it. So he's awesome. But yeah, it's just narrated, and it's not like a co-hosted thing where there's any banter and stuff like that. It's just me.
I mean, it's you and the voices in your head, and that's fine.
True.
All right. Thanks for tuning in to Brew Crime. You can find us on all social media platforms at Brew Crime. We have a Facebook group at Brew Crime Group, If you would like to support the show, head to patreon.com/brewcrime now. Money goes towards upgrading equipment and making the show that much better. You get one bonus episode a month, as well as early ad-free access to our episodes. So shout out to our Patreon supporters, True Crime Nana, 3 Beers In Podcast, Amber, The Faves of Our Lives, and our brand new Patreon supporter, Sandy.
Hey!
Cheers. Wait.
Bah!
Bye. All cases in Brew Crime are written by Mike and JT or a writer we credit on the episode, and sources are put into our show notes for each episode. We always want to give credit to the people that research the cases we talk about. Check out our store at tpublic.com/stores/brew-crime-podcast, where you can purchase gear like t-shirts, phone cases, stickers, pillows, and all kinds of other cool stuff. Brew Crime's intro was created by Mike using Creative Commons Attribution licensed audio from purple-planet.com, soundbible.com, and freesoundeffects.com. Logo designed by Ben Greenberg. Thanks for listening to this episode of Brew Crime Podcast.
I'm Paige, the host of Reverie True Crime. I tell stories of helpless victims, vicious killers, predators watching their prey before they strike, survivors, petty crimes, people we think we know who do the unthinkable, and the dangers that lurk not only in the dead of night, but in plain sight and the light of day. Every once in a while, I'll also tell stories of the frightening paranormal, elusive cryptids, haunted locations, and conspiracies that may be silly or thought-provoking. You can listen to Reverie True Crime wherever you're listening to this podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Jury Room. I'm your host, Kevin, and I will be covering anything true crime, from serial killers to cold cases, and everything in between. The Jury Room podcast is available on most major podcasting platforms. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow anywhere you can. Stay safe, and thanks for listening.
I think a lot of folks. Any thoughts, friends? I was not fishing. I was waiting for. I was not fishing for compliments on that. I promise.
No,
All right.
no.
No, yeah.
Those that weren't born in the area will pronounce it Norfolk. Those who are from the area pronounce it Norfolk. And those who just wanted to, get one over on the middle school bus. I messed that joke up. I totally read everything backwards. Go me. Mike, I'm going to read you that sentence.
Okay.
Then it'll make more sense.
That's
a beer break.
Which will be saved for the end because that'll be cut out.
Why do I feel like I have more bloopers than you?
No, not at all.
Most voluntary false confessions appear to result from an underlying psychological That's... Dang. That was tasty. All right. Wretched. I don't know. Some people say wretched. It's fine.
Stop.
What?
Oh my god, I just had the giggles. Oh my lord.
Oh. And Michael, he nodded his head vigorously.
Yep.
That can only happen if it's Morgan Freeman.
Sorry, I got Dick's DNA had me almost cracking up. I gotta edit that out, but I was just like,
I mean,
I'm a child.
That's where the DNA comes from? I don't know. I had 2 kids. I don't know how it works.
Storks.
I mean, let's be honest. I have the fun part. That's...
True.
That's the reality, y'all. The story doesn't end there, though, so I submit that we... Dude, IPAs are burpy.
They can be.
All right, well, this is burpy. You can add that into my review. I wrote here, hashtag not cool, bro. Feel free to edit that out. Prosecutor? Two things. You can cut out the fact in the beginning of the show that I said it smells like beer. And two, I really wanted to make a whitehead joke, and I held it back, so you're welcome.
You're welcome. Yeah, okay.
I would... Whoa! Wait.
Mike, what?
Wait. Mike, we have like 5 hours of free recording time. Wait. All right, you know what? Don't watch it. One. Wait till I get there.
Okay.
Whatever that is.
Yeah,
whatever
I
that is.
agree.
Because when you watch it, you'll realize, oh yeah, of course JT fucking likes this movie. Of course he does. All right, sorry. Never mind. I got nothing. I can't imagine. I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
But Mike, listen. Paige and I are always right. So
Yeah.
I've met my share of those kind of people. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
He would also... Oh, sorry, JT?
That was a stupid joke. I was going to say they were made out of wood. But that's...
No.
Keep moving. Sorry. Sometimes, Mike, all you need is just the tip.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. Right. Yeah.
Paige,
Well,
where
Paige-
can...
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, Mike, you could totally do it.
No, go for it, JT.